Hi, my name is Vito Morgese. Being put into a new situation with a stranger can be a difficult task, especially if you need to do something important. You know nothing about them, where they're from, what they think about you, who they are. This is called uncertainty. The uncertainty reduction theory explores the initial interaction between people that occurs between the actual communication process and is hence also known as the initial interaction theory. It was originally discovered in 1975 by Charles Berger and Richard Calabrese. The researcher background, mainly Charles Berger in uncertainty reduction theory. On Sage Publishing, they talk about Charles R. Berger is most known for his research on the uncertainty reduction theory. He got his BS psychology at Penn State and then went on to get his MA and PhD at Michigan State. In 1975, he teamed up with Richard Calabrese to create the uncertainty reduction theory. Throughout his life, he continued on the path of communication as the editor for Human Communication Research and Communication Research. He also served as president of the International Communication Association. Berger then was a professor and chair of the Department of Communication at UC Davis in California, teaching both undergraduate and graduate classes. He was also nominated and won a numerous amount of awards on his publications. Theory background. It was developed in 1975. Calabrese and Berger wanted to explain how interpersonal communication is used to reduce uncertainty between strangers during initial interaction. Berger says on businesstopia.net, as the ability of persons to predict which alternatives are likely to occur next decreases, uncertainty increases. There are two types of uncertainty, cognitive and behavioral, and there are two uncertainty reductions, proactive and retroactive. There are many axioms and theorems that go along with this theory. There are 7 original axioms that are the key variables of relational development: verbal communication, nonverbal warmth, information seeking, self-disclosure, reciprocity, similarity, and liking. There were 2 more added later on, one with Charles Berger called shared networks, and then one later without him in the early 2000s, communication satisfaction. On communicationstudies.com, an example is given of the uncertainty reduction theory of an employer that gives 2 new complete strangers a job together for 6 months. They know nothing about each other, and they're wondering, is he going to get me in trouble? Is he going to get me yelled at by my boss? And they begin to do research on each other, and they realize that one guy is really good with organizing, so he never will lose any of his files, and a bunch of other helpful stuff. This reduces uncertainty between the 2 employees. A media example is in Meet the Parents. Ben Stiller plays Gaylord Fokker, and Robert De Niro plays Jack. Gaylord is going to meet his fiance's father, Jack, and for the first time he must earn the trust of his father, who was an ex-CIA agent. In this movie, the axioms are present. Axiom 6, dissimilar interest, is brought up right away when they first meet. Pam unveils to Jack that Gaylord does not like cats. This immediately is dissimilar interest between the 2 because Jack loves cats and has one. Axiom 4 is also used in the first car ride between the 2 alone. They're talking about much smaller things like the objects in the car and not really about each other. And then as the car ride goes on, self-disclosure begins, as questions become much more direct and they become to get to know each other much more on a personal standpoint. As the movie goes on, the 2 get in all sorts of altercations, good and bad, and eventually move on to be pretty good friends in the end, which as their uncertainty reduces, they're able to know more about each other and be well more comfortable, and Gaylord is able to enter Jack's circle of trust. In conclusion, Charles Berger has had a very successful career in communication, mainly on the uncertainty reduction theory that he created. The theory explains the initial reaction between people meeting, which is a huge part of everyday life, and it really helps people understand why they're feeling the way they're feeling when they meet new people, and how to handle this in a good way to make relationships work. And many movies have examples of this all over the place. In every TV show and everyday life, this is a real theory that applies to everyday life and business. And I just want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something about the uncertainty reduction theory.